Hello again, fight fans. I'm Michael Montero from Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of February 4th. As always, some good stuff and a great new issue out, Boxing Monthly. Of course, big previews on the Hay-Bellew fight. There's full articles in there, one breakdown of David Hay himself and then one of Tony Bellew, all kinds of stuff. It is the quintessential guide to this fight. So if you're interested in this fight, of course, it's a big domestic grudge match in the UK. You got to check out this issue. One thing I really enjoyed, though, right up front, I don't know if you can see that right there. The editor, Graham Houston, did a quick little, just a little blurb about Alexander Povetkin and some of the issues there. I've done plenty of videos on it. I'm not going down that road again. Just read what the man himself has to say. Graham Houston, he's been doing this for a very long time. And as he puts it, and actually it's the way I put it too, not a good look for a guy who technically popped for a banned substance on a test and then literally a day later was fighting. Not a good look for boxing. So check that out. Check out the whole issue. But right now, we got a lot to talk about, so let's do some news and notes. Okay, a lot of stuff going on right now. I already did a video, my latest rant video, where I talked about the PBC having the best month they've had so far in January of 2017. And in that I talked about them getting the lawsuit from Golden Boy Promotions against them thrown out of court. So I'm not going to talk too much in detail. I'll just say this much. For those of you who don't know, without talking all the legalese and all the nonsense, basically what happened is the judge reviewed every single point that Golden Boy Promotions brought in this lawsuit. Al Haymon and his people dissected each point and literally shredded it. In the court of law, it's very hard in lawsuits like this to prove intent. You can show what something looks like. It might walk like a duck and quack like a duck. It might be almost an obvious duck to everyone who can see, but can you prove the intent? Can you prove that that duck has the intent to be a duck? And ultimately, nothing Golden Boy presented proved the intent of what they were accusing Al Haymon of. And vice versa, because Al Haymon accused Golden Boy of starting a kind of global media smear campaign against him, which there was some intent maybe with some of the nasty language going back and forth with people tied to Golden Boy, not necessarily Golden Boy Promotions employees, but some people they do some loose affiliation business with. But other than that, both sides of this spent millions and millions of dollars, wasted a ton of time. It's out of court now. And we could see if both parties could just get back to business as usual. But for Golden Boy Promotions, they also took a hit this week. Basically their logo, their trademark, Oscar De La Hoya, got arrested for a DUI. Now, yeah, I believe he blew on the breathalyzer test like a .08, which is just above the legal limit. So it's not like he was inebriated to the point where he was slurring his speech and can barely function. He had one too many beers. He literally had one extra beer or whatever the drink was that put him over the legal limit. Still, not a good look, right? And this isn't the first time Oscar has had issues with substance abuse. So obviously there's still some demons he's fighting there. And look, it's tough, man. You know, I tweeted out this week when all this came out that, alcohol, just addiction in general is a real thing. It's a mental illness, and mental illness is a real thing. And I have family members who struggle with this shit every single day. And it's hard sometimes as the family member of somebody who's going through that to understand and to put yourself where they are. I'm trying to be more understanding about that shit. But a lot of times it's who you roll with, and it's the positions and the places you put yourself into. And for Oscar, he's in boxing. And all sports are related to alcohol in a way, because people like to have a beer when they're watching the game, whatever game you're watching, but boxing especially. It's tied to casinos, it's tied, just the whole scene has women, booze, drugs. It's like the rock and roll of sports at that highest level. And that's the level Oscar's playing on, because everyone knows who Oscar De La Hoya is. I doubt he's paid for a damn drink in decades, right? Everywhere he goes, people want to have a drink with him and take a picture with him. He actually tweeted out pictures, or I think fans that he took pictures with at the bar he was drinking with that night. I think it was last weekend or earlier this week. They tweeted out pictures with him and I think tagged him, something like that. But there's pictures on Twitter of Oscar drinking at a bar with fans. And then he gets a DUI later that night. Again, not a really good look. Hopefully Oscar gets the help he needs, but it's more than just the help. It's knowing when to turn on the businessman hat, turn off the party hat. And when the fight card is over and everyone's going to the after party, Oscar needs to get in his truck and go home. He needs people around him that hold him accountable to make him do that. When fans want to buy him a drink, hey, thanks but no thanks. I'll be happy to take a picture with you, but you know, none of that. And if Oscar can't, if he doesn't have the control to be able to do that, he needs people around him that will step in and do that for him. So Oscar, I hope you get some help. And anybody out there suffering with alcoholism, it's a disgusting, nasty thing. And man, it ruins lives. So I feel for the guy and I hope he's okay. Let's see. Let's talk about some boxing though. Gerald Washington is now the opponent for Deontay Wilder for their card on Fox from Birmingham, Alabama. I briefly thought about going to this card because I've never been to Alabama. I'm kind of curious to go to Birmingham, which is like an older historic city, and to just see what the whole Deontay Wilder crowd down there is all about and how it compares to fight crowds in other parts of the country. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it though. I got to travel to Vegas in February for a project for Boxing Monthly magazine. More to come on that. So I got some stuff going on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out there, but I know Gerald Washington and his trainer, John Pullman, pretty well. They're super nice people. You guys know I basically called this one for the last week or so. I saw Gerald at the Kingdom Day parade here in LA a few weeks back, and he was jonesing for a Deontay Wilder fight. And the original opponent, the Polish guy who tested for drugs with VADA, now Gerald has been put in there and he wants it and he's ready for it. So now let's see. You know, sometimes I say be careful of what you asked for. It's difficult with Gerald because he comes from a football playing background, and football is such a different sport than boxing. I do think of all the American team sports, football is the most comparable to boxing, but the structure is so different. The way it's played is so different. The movement is so different. Football players are not very fluid with their upper body. They're more fluid with their lower body, with their feet, and some guys have, you know, hands, but they don't, head movement and, you know, your shoulder movement and torso. The guys on the line got to get torque and everything, but it's just a much different sport, the movement of it. And I think it's really hard for heavyweights to get in there and get in the ring without having an experience of head movement and everything. Deontay Wilder, he came from a basketball background, right? I do think basketball is a more fluid moving sport. Just the nature of it and how it's played, the tempo of it. It's a more cardio type of sport than football. Football is this boom, go, stop, boom, go, stop. All right, bring in the second unit, bring in the third unit. There's the offense, the defense, special teams, right? It's all this stuff. And you play one specific thing. It's very much a skill sport. There's a ton of physicality to it, don't get me wrong, so that correlates. But the fluidity of basketball, when you're playing offense, defense, everything, and you're going up and down the court, you're always playing. And I think that is a little more applicable to boxing as far as the movement and the agility of it. So Deontay's also been at it longer than Gerald, at least at a higher level. And Gerald, I think if he's going to have any chance in this fight, he does have strength and size, and I think he should just go for fucking broke in the first round. He should just go right at Deontay and come swinging at him and try to put something on him and hurt him and buzz him. Look, the Frenchman, Joan Duapas, Eric Molina, the Mexican-American guy, There's some of these fighters who are not as big and strong and powerful and athletic as Gerald Washington that were able to put leather on Deontay Wilder, and he's coming off a layoff off of that injury. So if I'm Team Washington, I'm coming out guns blazing. The fact that Gerald is as big and physically strong as Deontay, and the fact that Deontay is coming off such a long layoff actually makes that fight interesting for me. And I think it's going to be, for the first few rounds at least, a good challenge for Deontay Wilder. So I'm interested in that one. Some other fights that just got announced. Carlos Cuadras is going to fight on the Golovkin-Jacobs undercard against David Carmona, a Mexican fighter who he's lost a couple of fights, but he lost the unanimous decision to the Japanese monster Naoya Inoue last May. So he got 12 good rounds of experience against the monster that he's bringing in against Carlos Cuadras. So I think this is going to be a fun, entertaining fight. And now on that Golovkin-Jacobs card, you've got Chocolatito going up against a tough Thai fighter. That's going to be a fun fight. You got Carlos Cuadras in against a tough opponent. They both are heavily favored. They should be favored to win that fight. It's obvious what they're trying to do here, guys. If both of them win that fight, I think we're going to see a Chocolatito-Cuadras rematch later down the year in 2017, and I freaking love it. By the way, they're having a media lunch here, K2 Promotions here in LA Thursday to officially announce that fight. And I'll be going to that. So we'll try to get some video for you guys and some interviews if we can. So watch out for that stuff. Let's see, what else? April 8th, not sure if I talked about this one yet or not, but Terry Flanagan defending his, I think it's WBO title, lightweight title, against Peter Petrov over there in Manchester. That's a really, really good fight. It's obviously the best fight best opponent Terry Flanagan's ever had. And I think it's going to be a real good test for him. And Peter Petrov is one of those guys who has carved out a good career for himself. Some of it's been matchmaking, but it's also been hard work in learning on the job. And he has really, really shown improvement. He's won some tough fights in recent years to earn this title shot. And the best news is, promoter Artie Paludo is saying that there should be a United States television outlet for that fight. So more to come on that. Nothing is confirmed, but it should be televised in the United States for those of us on this side of the pond. For those of you on the other side of the pond in the UK, that's a great freaking matchup. Talking about the other side of the pond in the UK, I tweeted out earlier this week that both Wladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua are yet to sign up to send in the paperwork for VADA testing. And Eddie Hearn responded to me, not over email or text or anything. He responded to me on a tweet. You know, I can't get a hold of him any other way since he sent this tweet. But he basically just said they both agreed to VADA for this fight. And Anthony Joshua is random testing 365 days a year with UCAD. And just kind of left it at that. And a bunch of defenders retweeted him and said, oh, he got you, Mike, he got you. Actually, no, he didn't. That was promoter speak for neither guy has sent in their paperwork for VADA yet, but we are in this UCAD program, which is basically shit. I could care less about UCAD. And I know a bunch of you are going to jump down my throat, just like when they get on USADA here in America and the USADA people get down my throat. The best drug testing in the sport of boxing is VADA. Period. It's VADA. Okay, for a plethora of reasons that I've gone over a billion times. And I'm going to have a project coming up where I'm going to get even more details for you guys about VADA and what they do. One quick distinction I want to make. The WBC's clean boxing program, what they do with VADA, right, is for WBC-rated fighters in the top 15 of each division. You guys saw recently, I think it was this week, it might have been last week, the WBC put out a press release of all their fighters who are in the top 15 of their ratings that have not enrolled in the clean boxing program. And you put those guys on blast. So what that is it's an agreement between VADA and the WBC to do random testing at any point, but it's up to the WBC's commands. They run it, okay? It's the VADA program, it's VADA testing, but the WBC actually pays for that. Part of paying for your sanctioning dues and all that, if you're ranked at the WBC, they take a chunk of that, they whack it up, and they pay for this testing. But it's at the WBC's leisure. It's at their protocol. So they might test you once in a year. They might test you 5 times in a year. They might not test the 13th ranked super lightweight at all this year. Who knows? It's up to them. It's to their discretion. That's the damn word I've been looking for. It's at the WBC's discretion, not VADA's, okay? So being in the clean boxing program is awesome. And the WBC is really setting a good example, but they don't have tons of funds they can dedicate to it to do testing as often as they should. But if someone's suspicious or has a history of popping, they target that person. After that, though, it's very random. And when they want to test someone, they hit VADA up and VADA goes and does the test, boom, boom, boom. When 2 fighters go into an agreement, regardless of what title they're fighting for, whether they're even fighting for a title, but when they go into a fight with an agreement that they're going to do VADA, that is a contract between those fighters, their promoters, and VADA. It has nothing to do with the WBC, whether it's for a WBC title or not. So part of the negotiation between Klitschko and Joshua was that they wanted VADA testing for this fight. So they have to send in the paperwork and all that, the contracts to VADA to start VADA's program. And at that point, the promoter has nothing to do with it. The fighter, the sanctioning bodies, it is 100% at VADA's discretion. And they might test you 4 times in a fucking day. They might test you once a week. VADA does it. It's their discretion. And they have a program that they put in place for a fight camp, for a fight, okay? So you guys saw, like I tweeted a couple weeks ago, that Daniel Jacobs still hadn't gotten enrolled in VADA for the Golovkin thing. And finally, there was some pressure put on them and they sent in the paperwork and boom, they're in now. And they're fully getting tested by VADA. That hasn't happened yet with Joshua or Klitschko. And I say that because the people at VADA told me so, okay? I'm not gonna name names and blah, 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 but that's what's up. So it doesn't mean that they're not going to. It doesn't mean that they're dirty fighters. It doesn't mean that Eddie Hearn lied to everybody. And by the way, the drug testing and all that, it has more to do with Eddie Hearn, and it has not. He has a bigger chunk of the control as far as the promotion goes. So it's he's kind of controlling that on that end. Okay. Some of you guys have asked Klitschko's advisor, Bernd Bonte. He's involved in it too. Those are the 2 guys that got to get the paperwork and all that stuff in. At the time I'm recording this, they haven't yet. But I'm not accusing anybody of anything. All I'm doing is reporting the facts, okay? So as soon as they get the paperwork in and they are enrolled in the program, I'll tweet it out. I'll copy Eddie on it so he can retweet that and he can be happy. But some of you guys have taken this as me trashing the fighters or making some kind of accusation. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just telling you what's going on because I told you guys that's what I'm going to do. And I told you to hold me accountable and I'm going to hold myself accountable. Boom. I'm sticking to my word. Okay, a couple of fights. There's some rumblings about nothing signed, nothing official, but they're talking about it. It's in consideration. Billy Joe Saunders against Japanese middleweight Ryota Murata. That is apparently being discussed. I don't know. I don't care about anything Billy Joe Saunders does, but if something like that were to happen, I'd be interested because I'd like to see the Japanese kid put a whooping on him. Also, Luis Ortiz versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller. That's being seriously discussed. The issue is networks. Jarrell has been fighting on Showtime. HBO still has options on Luis Ortiz, so that could be a hiccup there. Hopefully that gets worked out. That's it with news and notes, guys. Let's talk about last Saturday's amazing night of action. Okay, so there were dueling cards on HBO and Showtime. They were both out here on the West Coast, but let's start in California with HBO's card in Indio, California. In the co-main, Takashi Miura scores a 12th round knockout over Miguel Roman in a brutal, brutal fight. Roman was dropped in the 10th and the 11th, dropped again in the 12th, and counted out. So it was a clean knockout. This, not a technical knockout, but a knockout. For Miura, he won this fight, but damn, did he take some punishment. And he's just one of those guys who's tough as nails and just will not stop coming forward. He bruises and swells a lot, but he doesn't necessarily cut a lot. And that's been his saving grace. He does get hurt, he does get put down, but he has power and he can hurt guys. And as he showed in this fight, he keeps his power late, which makes that win that Francisco Vargas had over him in late 2015 all that more impressive now, looking back. Because remember, Miura put him down in that fight, put Francisco Vargas down. But in this fight with Roman, he just took a lot of punishment. His face swelled up, but just the accumulative power of his punches. He has heavy hands, not very fast, kind of plodding, but a tough son of a gun who just keeps bringing it, and systematically beat Roman down. And now is in line for a crack at the WBC 130-pound title that he once held. In the main event, Francisco Vargas came in with that title and lost it to the new star in the 130-pound weight class. We've had a couple of new stars pop up in this weight class already this year, right? Miguel Berchelt with a very, very impressive 11th round knockout over Vargas. The difference, I talked about Takashi Miura's face swelling but not cutting. Francisco Vargas just cuts, man. He had cuts all over his face. During the broadcast, HBO showed kind of a side-by-side picture, and they showed a picture, I think it was the left eye with all the scar tissue before the fight, and they showed during the fight, and sure enough, boom, that's right where the cut was. I thought this fight should have been stopped in the 8th or 9th round. Francisco Vargas was never going to quit, but it was so painfully obvious he could not see out of the eye. When he first got cut, it wasn't that big of a deal. He's been cut a million times. But in those last couple rounds, he was just constantly wiping his eye with his glove. And it wasn't because he was sweating. That's because there was so much blood in his eye, he couldn't see what was happening. And, Berchelt, to his credit, saw that and just kept tagging him with right hands, just kept popping him with them right on the damn cut. And the cut was just folding over. And then a hematoma was forming. The cut was over here. A hematoma was forming here on Vargas. His face was just getting busted up. And finally, the fight was stopped. But I thought the referee dropped the ball. And I thought that, look, the ring doctor, Paul Watson, is one of the best in the business. And he kept looking at the cut saying, it's okay. He's looking at it as far as, is this going to cause irrevocable damage to this guy's face? Do I see skull? Is it close to a nerve? That's what he's looking at. And as far as he could tell, okay, it's a good cut, or an okay cut. But in the last couple of rounds, again, you can see that the guy can't see what's going on. He's wiping blood out of his eye. I thought that the ring doctor dropped the ball a little bit too, and he usually does a really good job. But more than anyone, Vargas's corner. What the hell are they doing? He had no chance of winning that fight after the 5th or 6th round. That was it. And it's one thing if your guy's not cut up and he's just kind of losing in a tough fight and you want him to go all 12. But man, his face was being rearranged. I remember after the fight when HBO was showing the punch stats, they show a picture of each fighter over the punch stats. And the picture of Francisco Vargas, he looked like it was like a headshot. He looked like a model. He was a good-looking guy. That dude and the dude in the ring after the fight, it was two different human beings. They did not look like the same fucking person. Vargas, to me, looks like a guy who's done. And, Orlando Salido is sitting ringside for this card. I don't think Salido wants any damn part of the winner between Berchelt, who now has that WBC title and now is in line to fight Miura. I don't think Salido wants the winner of that. I think he will try to go after Francisco Vargas again. You know, the two of them could do a rematch in StubHub Center. They're both bruised and battered and beat up, and maybe that will make for a good fight. Maybe at the very end of this year or something at StubHub Center, that might work. But for Berchelt, again, we have a new star. He looked bigger, stronger, hungrier, sturdier. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he's so strong and walks through punches. And I think he's just going to systematically beat the shit out of Takashi Miura when they fight, probably over the summer or something. That's going to be a great fight. I hope they bring it here to LA. That's a great StubHub fight this summer. But I see Berchelt holding on to that WBC title. And I don't think Orlando Salido is going to want any part of that kid at all. So in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, it was the rematch between Leo Santa Cruz and Carl Frampton. And this was a fun atmosphere. 4,000 to 5,000 UK fans made the trip. And they said there was about 10,000 fans there total. So you could say it was maybe half of the house was for Leo, half the house was for Carl. But Carl's side was a lot louder. I love UK fans. I absolutely have to get over to the UK to cover a fight soon, man. They made this so much fun. Let's talk about the co-feature first, though, real quick. Mikey Garcia scores a third-round knockout of the year candidate against Dejan Zlaticanin, grabs his WBC lightweight title. Now you have to consider him the top player in the lightweight division. And possibly he could go after the winner of the Linares-Crawler rematch, which is coming up, which Showtime just bought the rights to. That would be an awesome fight that would unify titles and probably be a number 1 versus number 2 fight to crown a new lineal lightweight champion. The thing is, this was a great performance by Mikey Garcia. A lot of us were kind of fooled thinking Zlaticanin was really going to give him a push. Of course, I favored Garcia, and I said last week that if Garcia is anywhere near the level he was a few years ago, he should clearly, decisively win this fight. But I didn't see this. 2020 hindsight, Zlaticanin was made to order for Garcia. If a guy stands straight in front of Mikey Garcia and walks straight in without jabbing, without even moving his head or feinting or giving a slightest hint of an angle on the way in or out, he's going to pick them apart and destroy them. I think the fighters that are going to give Mikey Garcia problems are ones who do use feints, who do jab on their way in, who are actually his size, and who can fight with angles and move around and use lateral movement. There aren't many guys like that right now at 135 pounds. So I think he's got the ability to really clean out this division. Let's see him do that, though. This was a great performance, outstanding, knockout of the year candidate. I do think it'll be topped by the end of the year, but it'll be a top 10 knockout of the year candidate, maybe top 5 at the end of 2017. But before we start crowning him as the new pound for pound top fighter in the world or something, let's see him clean up things at 135. Some of you have been talking about Garcia and Lomachenko fighting. Let's pump the brakes on that. Let's let Lomachenko clean up things at 130 pounds. And let's give these guys time to distinguish themselves in their divisions. And then maybe, a couple years down the road, a Garcia-Lomachenko fight might be the biggest fight in boxing to determine the pound-for-pound number 1 fighter in boxing. But it's way premature to talk about that stuff, okay? Now, in the main event, Leo Santa Cruz avenges his first professional loss, beats Carl Frampton by majority decision to grab back that WBA 126-pound title. 2 judges had it 115-113, and 1 judge, Bert Clemens, had it a draw. That's the same Bert Clemens that scored the Andre Ward-Sergey Kovalev fight for Andre Ward. The same Bert Clemens that scored 6 straight rounds in this fight for Carl Frampton. Scored 7 straight rounds for Andre Ward in that fight last November in Vegas. You see what I mean by Vegas judges? This fight was competitive, and Carl Frampton had his moments, but I don't see how you give Carl Frampton more than 4 rounds in this fight. I could see it as wide as 117-111 for Leo Santa Cruz, who suddenly fought technical and fought tall and used his height and fought beyond the jab and used some nice footwork here and there, got in and got out, surprisingly better than we all thought he could, or at least better than he's ever shown before. And I just thought he controlled the pace of the fight throughout. Again, I could see giving Frampton as much as 4 rounds, but I thought the 115, 113 cards were too close. Nothing Frampton did bothered Santa Cruz. And he had a hard time getting inside of Santa Cruz. Now, there were some rounds where I thought Frampton was able to lure Santa Cruz into more of a slugfest and inside just, a little bit of a war for a minute or two. And those are the swing rounds, the close swing rounds that I felt you could give to Frampton. But the rounds that Santa Cruz won were so much clearly won in his favor than the rounds that you could maybe give to Frampton. But even giving the benefit of the doubt in every swing round to Frampton, there's no way this was a 114-114 fight. I don't know what the hell Burt Clemens was watching. And even Carl Frampton, after the fight, admitted that Santa Cruz won. Now, he wants a rubber match. So does Santa Cruz. So do boxing fans, because these were 2 good, fun fights. The question is where? Frampton and his people won it in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I just don't think that's happening. There's an outside chance maybe it could go to London or something. Maybe. If they could offer a big venue, big money to Santa Cruz to come over there, I don't see it happening. Santa Cruz has pretty much had everything his way in his career. He's an Al Haymon fighter. He's one of Al Haymon's favorites. And he probably is going to want this fight in Los Angeles. Money might dictate it go back to Vegas. I don't know, but it's either going to be in Los Angeles or Las Vegas. Here's the thing. I didn't see anything in this fight that tells me the rubber match is going to be any different. Maybe Carl Frampton will show us a new level, a new wrinkle. Maybe he will prove greatness and make a second adjustment to Leo Santa Cruz. We'll see. But based on what I saw here, which was basically the taller, bigger guy using his height and length, that never changes. So now that he's figured that out, and sometimes it takes a loss to improve as a fighter. And Leo Santa Cruz, again, he's had everything his way. He got away with fighting sloppy and just throwing these flailing, loopy shots against guys like Abner Mares and everybody, a faded Abner Mares, because he was a good fighter at his best. But all the guys Leo's fought, he's been able to get away with that stuff. Against Frampton, he couldn't. He had to get smart. He had to fight disciplined. But he made the adjustment. And now, is Carl Frampton going to be able to do anything different to get inside of the much taller, longer fighter who is now fighting, who has learned on the job through a loss how to use those natural advantages he has? I don't know. But based on what we saw the first 24 rounds, I'm interested in the next 12. So I want to see it. Don't know how it's going to go, but I'm excited to see it, so I hope it happens. And I hope it happens at the end of this year. I expect both guys to take an interim fight this summer. Maybe Leo Santa Cruz rematches Abner Mares here in LA to make some money and everything. Title fight and all that good stuff. Maybe Frampton fights back in Belfast as sort of a homecoming to get back in the win column, and then they do a rubber match late this year. I think that would be the best scenario for both guys. Not a whole lot going on this week in boxing. It's Super Bowl week. So pretty much every other sport shuts down this week except for American football. But there is an LA Fight Club card in downtown Los Angeles from the Belasco Theater. I will be there covering that one. So go to Ring TV to stream that. Check it out. Those cards are always fun, okay? There's several. It's just undefeated prospects from Golden Boy's stable, ranging from 115 to 140 pounds. Those cards are always fun. They try to match those guys tough. Check it out. If you're not doing anything Friday night, stream it, have a beer. It'll be fun. On Saturday, Chris Eubank fights in London. I don't care. Sunday. Yes, it's not boxing, but it's the Super Bowl. So I'm going to give my pick, okay? The New England Patriots get a lot of shit. People love to hate them. I think a lot of it has to do with demographics and politics, and I'll just leave that there. I think a lot of hate they get is because of the image they put off that is not cool with most of America these days, and what they symbolize in the eyes of some people. So I think a lot of people like to hate on them, but this is, I think, the 7th Super Bowl for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And I don't give a fuck if they're deflating footballs. I don't care if they're videotaping their opponents' practices to learn stuff. You still got to play the game, and every damn team pulls some kind of stunt to try to get an advantage. These guys are great. They're a great team. Having said all that, I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan, their quarterback, has had an amazing year. He's been waiting for this. He's ready. I think that he is the MVP of the NFL this year. He's not the best quarterback in the league. That's Aaron Rodgers. But he's the MVP of the league this year. And their offense is so high-powered. They do everything. They run. They don't just run up the middle. They run sideways, too. They can throw over the middle. They can throw deep. Every type of route, they can run it. They can do everything on offense. And I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a very fun Super Bowl. It could go down to who has the ball last. I'm just thinking Atlanta gets the ball last, and they win this game by maybe about a touchdown. I think the Atlanta Falcons win their first Super Bowl in franchise history, and the South gets some respect here in America. I think it's going to be a really, really fun game. But that's it, folks. We'll talk some more next week. That's it for this week. Like, share, subscribe. You know the deal. I'll see you at the fights.